Watch Joe Rogan explore how to stay curious without becoming a gateway for chaos in this fascinating conversation with Jordan Peterson from JRE episode number 2308.
Of course.
Yeah, well, all these complex things are multidimensional. I mean, I watched your whole conversation with Douglas, and I thought you guys did a very credible job, all three of you, of navigating unbelievably choppy waters. So that's the first thing I'd like to say, because one of the things I was trying to figure out when I was watching that is, do I think I could have done a better job of any of you? And I certainly didn't walk away from it with that idea in mind. But then underneath all that, I thought there's a really unbelievably tricky problem here, and I think that's why it's made it poked up into, well, you also set that conversation up, but it poked up and made itself manifest in that conversation. And the issue is, how do you identify the psychopathic pretenders? And it's even worse now, and then make a barrier, right? Now, the right was calling for the left to do that for decades, and they didn't, and they couldn't, and the left is not good at drawing barriers, partly temperamentally. The right is somewhat better, but there's no shortage of monstrosity there. And so then the question is, how do you draw the line? And that's kind of what I was, because I've been watching these right-wing, they're not right-wing, these psychopathic types manipulate the edge of the conservative movement for their own gain. And a lot of that's cloaked in anti-Semitic guys. There's plenty of anti-Semitism on the left too, by the way. So it's not unique to the right.
Well, but particularly now.
Yes, particularly now. And so, you've let your curiosity guide you, your curiosity and your desire for knowledge, this quest, you've let that guide you as a podcaster. And by the way, I'm trying to work through exactly the same sort of thing. How do you know, given your radical increase in stature over the last 10 years, how do you know when your curiosity and even your skepticism about the fact that things aren't the way that people say they are, because that's certainly been demonstrated in the last 10 years, how should anyone decide what guardrails to put up? Like, what do you look for? Do you have a conceptual system worked out for that? Like, because
what do you mean? In what way?
Well,
how do I look for in terms of people to talk to?
Yeah. Because you have this insanely immense platform, and you're inviting people onto it. And you said to Douglas, and I know this to be true, that you're not really thinking about the outcome exactly. You're thinking about, this is an interesting person to talk to, and I'd like to go on that quest. But then you have the additional conundrum. We're trying to work this out in the Daily Wire side of things too. Not to say that that's exactly the same situation. It's like, once you gain in reach and authority, then how do you know that? How do you take great care that the people you're talking to aren't, what would you say, eliciting or feeding a subculture, yeah, that's right, that hasn't got the proper aims? Like, I guess the legacy media probably worked that out by having people, mediators, right, and guests, and that was also back when we could rely on the structures of authority in some sense to filter. And now we're in this helter-skelter world where everything is
the
up
legacy
for
media
grabs.
is the worst at that now.
Yeah, I know.
They're the worst.
I know,
that, which is fascinating. It really is. It's really fascinating when you lose faith in a New York Times piece. It's like you go like, well, this is bullshit.
Yeah,
I know this. I know what they're doing. I know they're just, this is editorial bullshit, and that didn't used to be the case. I don't think.
Trying to store up the treasure on earth, and that's better than not doing it. See, this is another thing we need to understand, because I've spent a lot of time, for example, trying to figure out why people are attracted to Andrew Tate. And I know why they're attracted to Andrew Tate. They'd rather be Andrew Tate than an incel. And they're right? It's best to give the devil his due. Like, if you had to choose between being kind of flabby and unhealthy and resentful and in your basement looking at pornography, hating women because all of them reject you all the time and you deserve it, and you're ineffectual and the future looks pretty damn gloomy. And then you see Andrew Tate, who's tough and hyper masculine in an almost manner that's almost a parody, and wealthy and famous, and apparently has women at his disposal, with a fair bit of stress on the idea of disposal. You'd think, well, I'd much rather be him than me. That's the incorporation of the shadow from the Jungian perspective. It's like,
yeah,
it's right.
And you think about the number of men that are incels. The thing about men also, if they get rejected a lot, they associate women with pain.
Yeah.
And then they get angry at those women because those women cause them pain. Like, it's just very simple equation.
Of course.
And that's how you get a man hater. Or, excuse me, that's how you get a woman hater.
Oh,
and the same could be said for, that's how you get a man hater, right? You associate men with rejection and cruelty.
Yeah.
And
well,
you
and
think
men,
they're all
men,
that way.
young men in particular are more likely to be rejected. Young women may have difficulty finding the ideal man, but they don't face the same degree of universal rejection. So it's hard on young men.
Well, they're not the pursuers, right, as much. The young women aren't.
Right. Well, and women are the gatekeepers fundamentally of sex. Sure. So that's their essential power. That's also the power of chastity.
And that's the scary thing about acquiring wealth, is that wealth allows you to bypass the genetic social hierarchy.
Yeah, well, I talked to Russell Brand about this a lot. You know, women threw themselves at him. How'd that work out for him? Not great. You know, it threw him into great spiritual confusion. It was empty and hollow. And that's worth knowing, you see, because you might say to the people who are interested in the shadow figures, and Tate plays that role, the master of women, let's say, why not do that? Because you need an answer to that. If it's certainly when it's better than being lonely, isolated, bitter, and ineffectual. That's for sure.
Right.
Well, it's because you don't confuse a stepping stone with the pinnacle. That's why. There's way more beyond that. I mean, you're a tough guy. You went through your disciplinary processes on the physical side, in particular, the intellectual side too, I might add. You know, you've got what Tate has to offer, but you're what? You're respectable. Why?
Well, I have a completely different background than him, first of all. And also, my feeling in life is whenever you can, be nice. That's like a general guideline.
Do you mean nice or good?
I mean both.
Okay.
Nice as well. I get the posturing. I get how it would be attractive to young men. I get it. If I was a young man, I would certainly be drawn to him, and I was to many fighters. And I accepted a lot of personality flaws in people that I admired as fighters because they were very successful at doing this one insanely difficult thing.
Right.
And oftentimes that requires a certain amount of narcissism. It requires a certain amount of internal focus. And ironically enough, not at the championship level. Ironically enough, it gets you close, but it doesn't get you to be the king. The kings are almost
precisely
universally disciplined, focused, and generally kind. They're some of the nicest people, the best at the most difficult thing athletically to do. And the most difficult, you're conquering other
why do you think that
men.
is?
I think you have to be.
Why?
I think
Why
Miyamoto Musashi wrote about this in the Book of Five Rings. You must have balance in everything in life. If you have imbalance, you can get pretty far because you're so
specialized.
Right, you're so driven.
Yep.
But you will fall prey to the balanced man.
Yeah, well that's exactly my point.
You will also recognize characteristics in him that you envy and that you wish you had yourself. Like if you're a narcissist and a sociopath, you know you are, and you can't really be proud of yourself. You can't. You don't have the benefit of the positive feedback that you get from true kindness to others. So Jamie went golfing this weekend with O.J. Simpson's golf clubs.
Uh-oh.
Not
You
with
need-
OJ. He's
you
not
should
here.
be
but-
exercised. I think that would be the next step.
Jamie
Definitely
bought
be the next
O.J.
step.
Simpson's golf clubs after he
This
died.
is like a childhood dream?
No, they were just for sale. I saw them for sale. I said, why not? They came in. I wanted some big grips.
Yeah,
They weren't that
a
expensive.
couple of my friends. What did Shane get? Shane got a bunch of
I
stuff,
talked
right?
him into buying some stuff, yeah.
He got like scarves and
Ties. He bought a bunch of ties.
I think scarves too.
Okay. He bought a trophy
A trophy.
and a Bill Clinton
Yeah.
signed photo.
And he spent thousands of dollars.
What was this? Was this some sort of O.J. Simpson auction?
Yeah, it was like an estate sale, yeah.
Yeah.
I see.
You know, he's dead now, so you can get his stuff.
Right, for nothing. Pennies on the dollar.
Well, I mean, only people like Jamie and Shane
arguable.
are dumb enough to buy it. It's like for a goof. It's one of those things like you're either getting it for a goof or you're a very dark person.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't want to own it, even for a goof. Like if I found out OJ played pool, I wouldn't want his cue.
Was there cues? No, there wasn't. There was a weird notebook that Robert Kardashian had like handwritten stuff to him.
Blood
I
splatter.
was like, whoa, that might be interesting. But
It's taking a vicious turn, Joe, already.
Yeah, that's a dark story.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you only know the surface of it.
Well, it's dark in both ways. It's also dark in planted evidence. You know, there was blood at the scene of the crime that had preservative in it, allegedly, supposedly, according to Robert Kardashian, and according to, I believe, the forensic scientists when they analyzed it. It matched OJ's blood, but they had to draw blood from OJ in order to determine whether or not it was his blood that was at the scene of the crime. And some of the blood found at the scene of the crime had that preservative in it that they use. They were sloppy in the 90s, you know?
Compared to now.
Well, there was no DNA evidence back then. You know, cops were there. There's always going to be a certain percentage of cops that just want to convict somebody regardless of the evidence. And if they're, you know, in their mind, they believe someone's guilty, they'll do whatever they can, including planting evidence, I guess. At least that's allegedly. Not that I don't think he did it. I definitely think he did it. But I also think the cops planted evidence, which is probably at least partially why he got off, you know? I think the big reason why he got off was Rodney King, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.